Hello, my dudes. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to the Astro News Network. Hello, people that have already said hello in chat. Someone subscribed before we started. That was pretty cool, too. Thanks a lot, Fliss. And Ben in chat, I want to let you know that it took me longer than I'll admit, or than I'd like to admit, that Ben OMG wasn't pronounced just like Ben Omg. It took me way longer than it should have to be like, oh, it's Ben OMG, not Ben Omg. Because I was like, why Ben Omg? That's such a weird name. Anyway, this episode is going to start out very much like it did the last one, where we talk about USSR and associated TENS guilds and U-Corp launching and landing together in the A30s. But this time, the D&D Alliance throws themselves face first into that fire and gets themselves killed. Other guilds did ops too. 40s tried to back up the 30s, but recalled when OPA and ZZZ invaded them in the 40s. And SF and Go went to the 10s while the 10s were recycling the corpse of the 30s. So a lot happened these past 2 weeks. Shocking. Also today, Baylor is going to be returning to the ANN. We're going to talk about Utopia for about 30 seconds. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the revival on Kepler. And then the state of Antares with them inviting and the clusters all kind of being separated out now. We're going to talk about all that good stuff. And after we chat with Baylor, I'm going to give the first B3 preview. B3 is only a little over a month away, believe it or not. I'll go over who is putting together a group so far. Some people are public recruiting, some are being a little secretive, and I'm going to do my best to spoil those secretive people who are still trying to get their groups for B3. One big, large, huge, giant, enormous, colossal thing I want to mention before we get rolling into the news. Astro Empire's creator, founder, programmer, wizard himself has agreed to do an interview on the ANN, albeit in text form. So I do need your help in coming up with some questions for him. I'm going to create a forum thread for it right after the show today. You can also message me in-game on Discord, somewhere where you can message me so I can get your questions. If you post it in the general Astro Discord, there's a chance I may not see it, so it's better if you can just send it directly to me if you could. Anyway, I'm hoping to send him the questions list by Wednesday. So from this moment, you have about 3 days, 72 hours to send me your questions of what you'd like me to try to ask Wizard. I mean, if you ask garbage questions like, why does your game suck? Might not send him that question. Just big forewarning there. And with that out of the way, let's start the day off by taking a look at the Antares rankings. They actually moved, so it's a little more interesting than usual. The top 5 guilds by level are OPA, USSR, SIMP, SF, and U-Corp. The top is still OPA and USSR, OPA with an even bigger colossal lead now. And they're a little different this week because of all the crashes in the 30s, invasions in the 40s. SIMP at number 3 was a bit of a surprise to me. You go 40s. That includes you, Ben, somehow. The 40s realigned. There's no more DYE, no more fake. They changed into SIMP, and I think it's MBM. I believe Halo is the GM of MBM. Not quite in top 10, I don't think, but they're close. And if you go to the rankings by fleet, that's, again, just like the top 5 in rankings, but it's slightly different. OPA, USSR, SIMP, SF, and MO. If you take a look at the fleet rankings, OPA has like a 50 million lead now. It's absurd. It's way too much. OPA number 1 by a long shot. If you go to the rankings XP, the top 5 guilds, D&D, W&W, U-Corp, Go, and B&B. It's no surprise that suiciding your cluster into an alliance that has triple your fleet is going to give you 3 of the top 5 XP spots. Where's the 4th guild? There's D&D, W&W, B&B. They should have another one that's on the XP one. Oh no, it's gone. Is it just war now? I guess on the news I should probably know that. Doesn't matter. And then we also have the top individual accounts as well. USSR Elite used up about 2 million fleet in the crash on the 29th. So he has finally relinquished his number 1 spot after months of keeping it on lockdown. Goes Seulgi, God knows how to pronounce that, is the new number 1. 5 of the top 10 are OPA, and there's also U-Corp Braves, SF Paleo, and Go FK Bank, and they all make up the top 10. In case you were wondering on Belwar's recall status, No, Total and Belwar did not recall this week, but I'm pretty sure we're due for another launch out of them soon. So I'm sure we'll get a good Total recall coming up again soon. Also, as Scott pointed out before we started, we have a small little update in the 50s. They got invaded just an hour ago. That was their official landing time, 1600 server time. Ready decided to invade 50 at 16 server time. Then they coordinated with Thog, who's recently renamed to 666. They have about 30 million fleet that has landed in A50, which has got to be more mobile than the 50s can possibly deal with. Haven't heard much about it in the Astro Discord at all, but the ANN will be keeping a sharp eye on this to see what develops. I would imagine the 50s avoid that crash because they'll die. And here we go, it's time again for that quick moment to promote myself. I would like to thank everyone that watches and followed and subscribed, all that good stuff. And here's that friendly reminder that if you do have Amazon Prime, you get a free monthly subscription to use on your favorite streamer on Twitch. And you can use this free subscription every single month. There's also a donate button like somewhere on this page too, if you're into that sort of thing. One person used it. And if you're not watching live, I upload this all to YouTube the next day for old people who can't figure out Twitch. And every follow and subscribe there is appreciated too. Twitch is better though. But enough of that. Let's get into the actual Antares headlines. Here we can see a trademark Wodan chart of the 30s crash, sink, and all that good stuff. But it happened again. TENS and UCorp revisited the 30s, this time returning before the D&D Alliance were able to return to vacation mode. There is that 5-day cooldown before you can re-enter VM. And the D&D Alliance took it right on the chin this time, just straight up suiciding their blob into the invaders' fleet that was probably 3 times their size? I don't know, way bigger. I streamed the actual crash 2 Wednesdays ago, I think that was the 29th. And it just wasn't even remotely close. It was over within the first wave. But that's what happens when you have a massive, massive numbers advantage. And real quick about the numbers, you see the Defender here, it says 122 million. They actually had closer to 150 million. Wodan had taken this a few hours before the actual crash, and D&D got more fleet on there. It was closer to 150 million. Anyway, the 40s, who were allies of the 30s, they had started flying down to the 30s to support the D&D Alliance a few days before the crash. However, they ended up recalling when they saw that OPA was launching at 42, which completely ended 30's already slim chances of winning any crash against the massive, massive invader coalition. The 30s only had 150 million blobbed, and they had a fleet size disadvantage because they'd civil warred their cluster, I don't know, about 6 weeks prior was when that all went down. And then they were invaded a week before then, so they had less prod from vacation mill, blah, blah, blah. Oh, Ben, it was only 70 million and not 80 million. Not even close. Anyway, but they recalled when they saw the UPA was launching. And once the teens also saw that OPA was launching away, they even brought China in, which was completely unnecessary. They did not need that kitchen sink at all to take care of the D&D Alliance, which we'll also touch on that. Because China had launched with them, like with all the other guilds that had landed first in the 30s, but they synced on the D&D blob like 4 hours later. It was very weird, very weird. I don't know what that was all about. But China was there. They didn't need to be. They could have done anything else. Maybe they hit some bases afterwards. Who knows? But in the days leading up to the crash, D&D had made a public statement about how they were going to crash like specifically one guild's fleet when they attacked their blob. And then they were also going to try to heavily target that guild's recyclers after the crash to determine the ultimate fate of the server, because they would decide what cluster wins or doesn't win. But that didn't really come to pass. I mean, UCorp did take a larger percentage of the fleet getting killed in the initial crash because they synced by far the best for that actual crash. And when it came to killing the recyclers, I don't think there was anything special about it at all. Like, it was no more than any average recycler sniping by a losing guild. I think if they had killed more recyclers, we would have seen a lot more battle reports showing it. Trace did manage to get some of his frigates killed over some base. Alicus got to tighten those. But the 30s stood absolutely no chance of winning whatsoever. In the days before, they predetermined that they chose to die in that absolutely unwinnable crash. It's hard to know what angle they were looking at to decide that straight up dying was the smart play. But in the end, I guess you can take Cloak and Zahaga out of the alliance, but you can't stop that alliance from horrifically killing themselves in an obviously unwinnable crash. I mean, we'll see if the 30s can recover and return to relevancy. They've had it rough over the last 6 weeks with having a civil war, which left them in bad shape. And then they picked fights with the most skills on the server that they possibly could, that they weren't in the position to take all those fights. Then they got those fights that they picked when they weren't ready, and so they just got easy zerged out. I mean, even if the 40s had chosen to land their fleets in the 30s with the OPA invasion, I don't think that was going to make it any easier for them. The 10s and U-Corp was just way too much fleet to deal with. If anything, the 40s dodged a bullet by not getting suicided in that crash. And speaking of the 40s, we're going to sidestep over to just talking about them now. I don't have a different picture for them, so you're just going to keep looking at this Wodan sync chart. At roughly the same time that the 10s and U-Corp invaded the 30s, OPA went on a trip up to the 40s while the 40s Guild Simp was mid-flight to help, sending down to try to help the 30s. OPA chose not to shotgun, mainly just to see whether the 40s were going to actually back up the 30s or if they were going to recall mid-flight and get some of their guild not back in vacation mode times to give them just a free farm with no resistance. And no, hold on, I almost said the same sentence again. The 40s chose to recall and got half the guild into VM, maybe a little bit more. OPA landed in time to catch some fleets, definitely not a majority, but some fleets, roughly 20 million or so overall throughout the whole trip. But then they also got to bust the profitable bases that were available. Unbeknownst to OPA, at the same time, Go had shotgun launched to the 40s to land the day before they did. And they were pissed that OPA's launch had put the 40s on guard and they were going to try to recall and go vacation mode. So Go recall from their launch, and they also dropped all of their out-of-cluster packs, which includes OPA and was mostly also just limited to OPA, but still worth noting. Atreides and OPA had put together a little stat sheet of how much OPA had managed to kill. They calculated about like 20 million fleet killed, roughly 100 bases hit, and just 10 million profit overall were the numbers he came up with. That's probably about right. I mean, it wasn't a massive invasion. Most of the 40s did go into vacation mode, and there were some people that were just not profitable, had 2 rings up or more, so they weren't going to get a hit anyway. So the 40s, I mean, they took some damage, but it wasn't a ton of damage. Okay, because like I said, they weren't super profitable. They had at least 1 level of rings. Some had 2 or more. Like DPS, I remember he has 3. And on OPA's exit, DPS came out of VM and was able to kill one OPA dude's recyclers. I guess he just was dumb and forgot to move out, God knows what. But DPS got to kill his Rex. There was a big hubbub at the time of the 40s launch because the 40s were mid-flight to the 30s, and OPA's move allegedly killed the 40s' ability to support the 30s against the 10s and U-Corp. I'm usually pretty critical of OPA's decision-making, which I will have more to say on that after this 40s detour. But OPA moving to the 40s didn't condemn the 30s to die. I really don't think it did. The 10th and U-Corp force was already so large, even with the 70 million or so that the 40s had that was headed to the 30s, that wasn't going to be enough to change the outcome of the battle anyway when it comes to just 70 million more fleet and the fleet sizes and averages not being that big enough to make a difference against those bigger simmed up teens fleets. That wasn't going to chip away at it like they would need to win. I mean, OPA still considers USSR their big bad enemy. I mean, this was like the only time OPA hasn't tried to counterplay a USSR move. It's the only time. I think we shouldn't say that they're in bed together just quite yet. But also, the 40s were decently defended, mainly due to all the 30s invasions before them. They had to be. If saving the 30s was truly the 40s' priority, I don't think they had to recall and go vacation mode. Like, even for the simp players that had 1 P-ring and didn't VM, like their GM, like Tuxedo, he didn't go VM. He had only 1 ring. He would just cancel his trades when someone came at it. And that was that. I mean, a lot of players are stingy. If you're going to make 50,000 in losses for the even just 5k profit, I know that's obviously the right play to do on a fleet maintenance server, but some people are going to say maybe that's not worth it. I think the 40s could have gotten away without going VM. I mean, it's a hard choice to make, but even DPS has chosen to bite the bullet. Like way back on Nexus, when everyone invaded the zeros, he decided they let him be the one getting invaded and take the base hits, and he took it on the chin. I mean, it's a hard choice, but I mean, it's probably better that the 40s didn't go down and get killed with that suicide mission the 30s went on anyway. But all of this does really, because I didn't see anyone without P rings. I mean, maybe they just got into VM, so I didn't check them out fully, but most people had rings, dude. To say a lot of people don't have P rings in your guild is preposterous. That's preposterous. Well, yeah, but now I'm going to talk about how OPA should actually embrace being the villains of the server, because they are the official Antares fun spoilers. Then we can have the obligatory where you die a hero or live long enough to become the villain. And then, because with the original 30s and 10s alliance gone and forgotten, I feel that OPA has definitely slid into the actual server villain role. Before the coup of the 30s, that big civil war that took place 6 weeks ago, OPA had been leading that crusade against Cloak and Zahaga against several servers and was just completely successful at that. They Mystic, Nexus, and here, they're gone. They're gone on all of them. And one of Chansey's main things, as he was always saying, is that when Cloak and Zahaga put the most players in one cluster and then make only a few moves, it kind of throttles the server into inaction, because any smaller guilds can't really make any other moves against it because one cluster is just so big. However, with Cloak and Zahaga gone, the 10s 30s alliance way gone, I feel that OPA has become the new server throttlers, and I have some thoughts as to why. OPA, as the rank 1 guild, massive lead over the rank 2 guild. They're in the strongest cluster, have J jump gates across the server, they have mean in their back pocket. When they're acting with the mentality of that small, scrappy underdog guild, only attempting counter launches, counterplay stuff against other guilds that make moves, like that's going to really slow down the server, because it's going to force other people into inaction, because the risk of getting ganked by the huge rank 1 guild is omnipresent. It's just everywhere. So people are only going to want to make extremely boring and safe plays. Is Black playing server police again? Scott, Black has very much stepped back from OPA decision making officially. But that's what OPA has been doing. And let me just list a bunch of the ops that they've done on this server. And by some of the ops, I mean all their ops. And you tell me if you notice a pattern on this. They launched at Japan while they were mid-op in the 40s. They launched at the 10s while they were mid-op. They launched at Trek while they were mid-op in the 40s. They launched at the 10s while they were mid-op. They launched at the upper 30s while they were mid-Civil War. They launched at the 10s while they were mid-op with their own ally U-Corp. And they launched at the 40s while they were mid-op. I will let you sense what you think the pattern might be. I'll let you make your own decisions. And also, I want to point out that OPA had to have known that launching at the 10s was going to sabotage U-Corp's op to the 30s with USSR. I mean, it's not that common for a guild to straight up work with your ally's most direct out-of-cluster enemy, unless something has pushed them in that direction. And I think it's possible that OPA's style has put them in that position, although there is a couple asterisks to that already, such as U-Corp loving to go on ops led by other guilds. And such as D&D's GM being unrivaled at making enemies out of everyone to kill them regardless of server balance. He has a gift at that. Although OPA did support U-Corp after ending their own 30s op by denying D&D's attempted recall trap a couple weeks ago when U-Corp was leaving the 30s the first time. So it's not like OPA and U-Corp are enemies in any way, but I think it might have been some kind of like wake-up call of sorts for OPA. Anyway, I feel that OPA is like, they're the current strongest guild by a long shot in the strongest cluster, and they should be the ones that are like in the driver's seat for the server direction instead of just waiting for anyone else to make a move and counter them. I mean, if they're trying to just flat out win the server, that could be do it, but it's probably not the most fun way about going about it. Anyway, but thank you for coming to my TED Talk. on OPA. But that's not all that happened this week. There's still more. Like, there were the Zero Guilds, SF and Go. They sent 100 million to the 10s while they were busy recycling in the 30s. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I don't know the details. And I brought Baylor on to talk about it for me because I don't really know the numbers or anything or what they really did. So give us just a minute and we're going to be right back with Baylor. So one moment. Alright guys, we're back with Baylor already. Baylor's been on the show a few times, so we're very glad to have him back. And I guess, Mr. Baylor, what would you like to talk about first? I know you're busy on 3 servers now. There's Kepler, Utopia, Antares. Maybe we want to start on the Antares op you were just on with Go, because that's what I was talking about just before. How about that?
Yeah, let's start there and work our way backwards.
Sure.
Well, most recent, yeah, so the most recent is Antares, and we launched 100 mil fleet, and that was sort of our grand debut as a cluster block for foreign outing, and 32 didn't count because that was only 25 mil fleet for us, and Go wasn't there, so this was a pretty big team up, and it was a good time to do it because OPA wasn't in position to invade the zeros, and Trace has 488 mil cluster fleet, I want to say.
Yeah.
So then, you know, that's really hard to invade when they have twice as much as us. If you see that chart at some point later.
I'm pulling it up right now. So
yeah, so they have quite a bit. So it seemed like a good opportunity. It was really the only move on the map, and we had Go, we had us, and it was easy. Actually, it was really easy, and they didn't put any pressure on us at all, despite having 200 mil toward the end, and we had 100 mil starting, and then that was closer to 80 by the time a few people sent away early if they were going to be offline the next day. So then Belwar was right next door with 50 mil, and they just really took it easy on us, didn't put any pressure at all. So that was kind of nice. Sometimes I break a sweat, as you've seen, but not on this one.
Yeah, because they had the opportunity to really pressure you out, but I knew, like, kind of vaguely that they didn't. Like, they had their fleet back in the teens, and they were just like, they'll leave when they're ready.
Yeah, a lot of people don't have the killer instinct or the timing. I know that if you invade OPA in a similar circumstances, then they would be going at you a lot harder with that mean guild that FK likes to talk about.
Yeah, they're just a bunch of new players. Nothing to worry about there. They're just new players that you haven't seen on any server before.
Yeah, well, they have a peer competitor in XP for the 10s.
Yeah,
because that's the multi guilds for the 10s, I believe, right? Is XP?
I think it's
XP. See it in the average, it sucks.
Yeah, yeah. Because really, out of all the different clusters, I still think that the 30s and 40s, I'm sure they're still allied and they're kind of linked, and because they are still allied, like Zero's definitely smallest cluster with player count and fleet, both of them.
Yeah, you still see it on player count, and then the 30s will be able to get back some of what they lost, and then the 40s is, I'd say we're the 3rd strongest cluster now, and 30s rebuilding some fleet. Even if they had more fleet, I don't think that makes them the 3rd strongest cluster necessarily. And then definitely as a defense, we'd be pretty hard to beat. And I think with you were saying about the 40s sealing the defeat of 30s, which I completely disagree with. Well, I agree with how you phrased it, I should say, because 30s still committed to the Doom crash, and 40s could have still landed their fleet. If they, I guess I understand the recall, but to just get benched like that and get half farmed, I don't know. It didn't seem like that really did a lot for 40s. I probably would have tried to dodge that crash anyway if I was the 40s, because you just have so many
It was straight
fields involved.
suicide. It was madness.
Yeah, so even if you
that.
get another 100 mil, I mean, so I think it was 388 mil after China. I mean, that's crazy. I would have never taken
No.
the 150 mil crash in mid cluster, no less.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know what the angle was, but they took it. They decided to just get killed. But on the bright side, they'll probably get left alone for a while now, so they'll probably get to rebuild a bit. But I mean, if they were gonna kill themselves and just be like, we're gonna focus on B3, like the timing wasn't right on that. B server is still a month away.
Still, way too early to way too early if that was the. So they sent what, 5 guilds this time. So I think for the. Do you really think that the same coalition who broke the 30s are just going to let 30s get big again? I think they'll be back sooner than we think with 2 or 3 guilds, because they don't need to bring as many guilds this time.
Yeah,
but
right.
Trace is a very cautious man.
Yeah.
So I think that hopefully the 10s 20s balances, that they're the only ones who can really fight each other and make it interesting. And I wouldn't have backdoored the 10s unless it just made sense. I like Zoo, but it was just geography. It wasn't personal for me.
Yeah, because I don't think that U Corp is going to be working with the 10s a bunch more, or really much more at all. I think it was just more of a Alicus called everyone out, so everyone that he called out decided to go kill him, and that's why they worked together. And
yeah, well, the only one
said, fuck server balance, let's go kill him. And that's what
I was feeling a little left out of this one, because I know Alex wanted to kill me, and how'd that work out for him?
Not great this time.
He managed to piss off Go, and I guess I didn't know that the 10s and U Corp were so against him, but it's interesting certainly that he's a more unpopular fellow than myself.
Because I think that because they have a link back on Utopia, I believe they all played together on BFG, so it wasn't crazy out of nowhere that they signed up to go kill Alicus together.
I think it's just easy. I think Alicus makes hating him easy, and then squeezing his guild for derbs is just it's just kind of easy. Like, I don't really view it as mega zerging or even 40s. With the counter, like it kind of doesn't count because it's Alicus, so everybody can kind of put that aside and rebalance after. And but hopefully that 10s 20s gentleman agreement. I know that a lot of people on the upper part of the server were distressed by that, so hopefully that decreases, not increases.
Yeah, because just as people like to say, they say, "Oh, it's the propaganda hour." When I said the 40s could have recalled or not, but they didn't have to recall, or they could have landed. It's the choice was there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to recall, then obviously the Oakville fleets were launched. All of your launches have been ninja formation, right? So
except for that one to the 40s,
right, which is clearly meant to be seen to make the 40. And if you're launching a much bigger force that that, all right, it doesn't matter if they see us, we can just raw dog brute force it anyway.
So I think that was more the rationale. I think that was more the rationale. Just we had so much, it didn't matter. We could kill them whether they came back or not.
That too. It's also a pain in the ass to split up your fleets into 20 fleets, and it's just easier to
take a break from the shotgun launches for once when they're not needed.
But it also worked out, and it gave 40 something to think about, and they kind of got the worst of both worlds. They got half farmed. They launched out. They didn't get to do anything productive with it. So all they did was, as Zar would say, get farmed and take it like a man.
Oh, good old Zar. God, Zar is like the only person that has just like done suicides like that in years.
Well, it was. I didn't really ever worry about it when I brought him back in on Kepler, and maybe I should have, but that was so that's actually where Kepler misfortunes began when Zar suicided at 17. But he's allied with the China Multi Guild now. So nevertheless, all those nice things he said about me on your channel that one time, all that still happened, and we did a lot of good guild work together. And I still like the guy. I kind of hope that he'll come back from the Swee and Stab and cross server side of the force, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I think he's actually just He's rage quitting all of his servers is what I heard might be happening. But I'm involved in I think well, two of those servers except for Typhon. Typhon's the only one I'm not directly involved with.
Yeah.
And you're on, and actually a lot of the Typhon people who I'm friendly with are on Czar's side of the Typhon, so I'm not trying to really get in
No.
and put my thumb on that side of the lever against them.
Do we want to talk about the Kepler revival now?
Yeah, that might as well talk about that one a little bit since Czar's he suicided that account. Now he has another account with the Kepler Rebel Alliance, and the so you called it a prod sync. I called it a prod bomb initially, and I don't think we've ever seen anyone do that before.
No,
and we'll
very creative move. Yeah.
Yeah, they went dead in October, and I knew they weren't prodding, and I guess I just didn't really think about it much deeper than that, and nobody else really did. And then you just kind of take it for granted. You know, we were in Juno state of mind, and they still had. So we knew that they had 250 mil fleet, and we had scouts everywhere over every galaxy, multiple per galaxy. So their fleet just wasn't anywhere to be found. You know, so they had a 250 mil remnant, and then I guess October is when they started scrimping and saving, and they put in some pretty big orders for fleet. And I just don't think you'll ever see that on because it's just V3 servers here on out. So that's more of a V2 thing that you can come back from the dead after getting your blob totally ZF'd, however long ago that was.
Yeah, it's too bad it took people over 5 years to figure it out that there's a wacky, huge comeback strategy on 2.0 servers now.
If they can come back, yeah, that means that, and BMF has never been broken like Spork, so now they're back to where they were, you know, before we crashed them, and I want to say that was about a year and a half ago.
Yep.
So then BMF has never been broken, so you know we could get broken, totally blob farmed, and then permacamped for like a year, and then we could do the prod bomb and have fleets again, because V2 we basically had built as much fleet as we could under the old BMF, and then we started losing people to, you know, like Czar suicide, and that actually kind of helped us. In a weird way, it helped us out because after our biggest fleet killed our other biggest fleet on 17, and we had just been permacamping all of their clusters for the longest time, and then we were pretty inactive, we were pretty spread out, so at that point you see the shape that the 17 blob is in. It's like, all right, well, I guess we're heading home, you know, full reset, everybody get the heck out. And then we kind of did a similar thing with the zeros, and we had one really big fleet who died there, but otherwise, so then if we had been just a few, like an extra week or 2 weeks, Czar kind of helped accelerate our movement out of there, and then the zeros happened anyway, so we actually could have lost a lot more fleet than we did. But I have a guardian angel, what can I say?
Speaking of a guardian angel, someone in chat, best GM ever, love that someone has a Twitch chat multi, says Baylor was warned and still failed to act.
Was warned and still, well, I don't know which warning. If you mean K23, then there were 2 guild players who warned me, and my response to that was, well, I just don't think they're gonna make that move. And then I wish, you know, so I'm not shipping blame, but when you're in my position, I feel like a lot of people don't really come forward with like, hey, you know, this plan sucks and you're going to lose, so here's what you should, you know, I kind of wish people would come at it a little harder, you know, and I'd listen. Like, I like the QA. I have a background in QA, so often I don't really get that kind of peer review on my ops.
Yeah, but right now on Kepler, like the sizes of the blobs are like the BMF would still have to be the aggressor because we have more. But right now, just because it's an older server and the activity's not there, like we can't just launch on their blob. There's no way that can happen. So
well, so yeah, so we did try that, and that so that didn't quite work out.
No.
So then you can't catch their blob because so you saw like you look at your Elysium guild, you look at our Kepler guild. I look at like, okay, so I see that 500 mil fleet has logged over the last X hours. That's pretty good, you know. So I look at that and I see that we have enough fleet. If Spork's gonna, it sure looked like they were gonna consider crashing us in 28. They moved a lot of fleet to 19, and then I saw that okay, they might actually be able to crash us in 28, but then we moved to cock block that pretty decisively. So they actually moved their whole blob, and they have that high login rate. but then they just haven't done anything for the last 30 hours. So that's I learned a lot watching their response and their time. So it's going to be, I have a better strategy now than the one we tried a few weekends ago. So this is definitely more like it, and because you can't catch their blob,
No, yeah,
they just
because
have to.
I'm surprised they didn't try to like straight up contest us and kill us that first time we went through the wormhole. Like
Well,
we launched through to '09
yeah,
with like less than
you saw the
300
same
sync.
thing I
They
did.
could have got
You
us.
saw the same thing I did, which was that we had a few key fleets that just needed to be closer to the front, and that launch was super vulnerable. And if they
Hmm.
had really challenged it, then I think that would have had to been a recall.
I think so too.
Um,
Yeah.
but it kind of threw us like it, because then they bailed out the caps to the 19, right? So then it's like, all right, are they contesting us or are they not? So then the caps we figured out, everybody else is going to 9. Then the caps went to 19. So that kind of made us think most of them were going 10s, and really it was 23. So that can never happen again. But now I have a much better. And then you think of those people who are a little less active on a daily basis, and so now the new strategy allows people who are pretty active, but like I don't really want to send a bunch of texts, like leading into a weekend op. So you can take your actives and fight with those, and then you still have your cluster defense, and it's just a much better way to use the big fleets who are otherwise going to be a little farther behind the sync.
Because I think Kepler's it's a long war now, so they say it's going to be just little picking off what we can here and
They
there. And
almost came, yeah, they almost came to us, and I think so. I'm going to keep sending away a little bit of fleet, and when they're ready, they'll come to me, and I think they're going to get tired because I saw their one guy, the first wave, it was like 150 mil fleet, and so I saw it, and so I screenshotted that. I'm like, okay, that's the first portion of so it's basically a private multi-army, and you have one guy who controls about 150 mil, and I think it's really only like 5 guys, and I'm not the only person in the guild. There's other people who, if you just kind of like eyeball it and you see how fast they move out within 2 hours, like you move all the guild fleet within 2 hours, and then you look at a guild that's reals, like yours on Elysium or even on Utopia. I mean, that kind of move rate is unreal. No, no, it's unreal. It's just it's honestly like 90% login rate, and of that I'd say 70% multi rate. So then you have like Czar account is piloted, so Czar, he plays that account, but he kept it on the same open keys, and then Trace is also for sure part of he's a loan out and a piloted account for sure. But I mean, there's only like 25 people you can see their blob, so they need all the help they can get, to be honest. And you basically have like 5 guys running the show, and look at what they came up with. So we'll get a 5th crash out of that eventually, and they did. It's definitely pretty try hard, their approach, and we took it for granted a little bit, but I have a really good, and I can't really talk about all the details and all the ideas because it's an ongoing war, but I have a lot of ideas, and what Spork has been doing, they've been working on their plan since October, so now they're finally getting some returns on those investments. So then I don't think it's going to take us, almost a year to, but we're building new econ. We have other things in the pipeline.
yeah, yeah, because yeah, we're eco pushing now. I'm pushing Spaceports 25. How brave is that?
Oh yeah. Well, and eventually 30s, SP30s, and then and yeah, I think the Spork Bank, I think they use SP31s, and they probably have up to 30 mil credit banking capacity. So they definitely played it very smart with the fleet capacity, because it's 100%. It's hard cap 100% fleet cap on Kepler.
Speaking of other guilds where we wish our activity was better, do we want to talk about Utopia real quick?
Yeah, we can talk about that one.
Yeah, because that's just been another stalemate there for a while. It's RD and ELO against WM and the remnants of BFG, and their alliance, they have about roughly 600 million more on their blob than we do. That'd be a RD and what's our guild, ELO. We have about 2.5 billion on our wormhole, and they have a little over 3 billion.
Yeah, we're a little under immobilized right now, so I need to crack the whip on that. I know that me and some of a lot of us have been kind of taking Utopia a little bit easy because it's stable. right now. Nobody really thinks that the launch is going to be. I thought it would be more imminent than the last time. So that's when the last time I was on. A lot of things have happened since then, but I guess it was kind of a slow news cycle that week.
Yeah, and then the wormhole in the 20s just moved, but it only moved from 28 to 29, so not much of a big shakeup there.
Yeah, 20s is
that could have been an opportunity for them, but it moved nothing. So
yeah, you have the picture of the 3 bill, so that's going to be a tough nut to crack for sure. And I think it's like the old servers where you hit like Gamma and Phoenix crashes. These crashes were Nova as well. The final crash against SLS. These were a long time coming. So it's it's a project that you end up working on with your boys.
Yeah, and really, I think WM activity is surprisingly good. Like when it was a week or two ago, I forget exactly, but they had moved to the 30s wormhole after we had moved some fleet up there, and they had moved a surprisingly good amount up there, so that we had to recall and dip out of the 30s.
Right, but back to that's Utopia. So then we there's been a little movement on that with hitting 30s and so a little movement, but in a different way. We're not really any closer.
No, not
to
at
big
all.
Crash than we were when we last talked.
No, definitely not. That's why I said I knew Utopia would be short because it's still the same thing, and no one's really inched forward closer either way. Maybe it's been a little worse for our side because we kicked her someone, but that's about it.
Well, that was and that was.
Because that dude, why did he just delete his account and your main jump gate on the other server, not passing logs?
Well, so
they laughed about it.
He actually,
what?
Yeah, so I have a little bit. I'm not going to talk about the other angle because I guess I thought there. So he went to the 50s. He didn't go to the 10s, which was surprising. Like, okay, you relocated into the 50s. That's pretty kind of weird. But I guess he had some friends there from back in the day. But so the Frankie kick there was fine. It was totally fine because this guy I can see why. So he called me an incoherent idiot. Is what he said. He didn't bother to message me. He ghosted the reply. I just asked him why, and then he thought it was all a joke. He had already joined. Apparently, he had joined RD. He changed his name to Mr. Frankie. He just didn't tell Mr. Black or ask him if he could be RD. So then he kind of So I was.
Because Black's not going to stand for that shit either. If you're just deleting your jump gates on other servers with no notice, he's going to.
If there's inconsistencies and your story doesn't add up and you can't be trusted, and that's really what it was about. It wasn't about like Czar cross-server suicide. It was more so the whole thing with Frankie was I can see why he might have been pissed before the Utopia 38 crash because it wasn't my best work, to be honest. But it was also a hard uphill fight against basically the A10s was who we were fighting on that U30s. So that was a struggle, but the crash was great, and everybody loved the crash, and that vindicated a lot of previous frustrations. And then so Frankie wanted to be with us on A3. That was a few months ago. He wanted to be the JG10, but apparently he's known me for long enough to think I was an idiot and he hated me, and I don't know. So the whole thing, it just means he wasn't honest and he was a hidden enemy the whole time, and it means he can't be trusted on the Utopia crash.
Yeah, it's simple as that. Sometimes you want to make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. But I think we've just about touched on all the servers. Is there anything else we want to talk about, big picture, Antares-wise? Anything? Oh, anything about B3 you want to talk about? Because I'll be talking about that in just a minute.
Now, which ghosts are we talking about, Scott? The B3, so I mean...
Yeah,
I think
kicking that dude was the right move. That's not seeing Goose. That dude was... He's a mess if he's playing with you on multiple servers like that.
We thought he was just going to defect down the wormhole to the 10s, to be perfectly honest. So, it was kind of naive on his part. But we just didn't have confidence in the fleet after that. But I threatened the 50s, and then they asked Frankie to disband the JG10. You can't stop your enemy from having gates high enough level in your cluster eventually. But sometimes a little bit of spewing threats and kick dibs as well. Kick dibs is more strong holding and nation building within, and then spewing threats is more. I don't really spew threats internally, but I will sometimes externally.
Yeah.
But as far as B3, I think the meta seems to be 5 guilds per cluster block. So you have the Tsar guild, who's always with Belwar, but he's allied with the China guild and the China multi guild, and then all those guys. So I think you're gonna have actually 7 trace guilds for wherever they decide to go on B3. I know Clarky is going to be with them, so you're looking at like 7 guilds for. So I know that I'm not going to make a guild for. I'll probably play B3. I'm just not going to make a guild. And if I did make a guild, then it would be like a 1 for, and then you'd have maybe you get a duo. Maybe Go would want to go together, but I don't really. I'm just not going to do that because I don't.
Pre-server
feel
pact with Cancer Crew confirmed. It's
Well, no. So
confirmed. It's too late.
they don't do that stuff. But I wouldn't put myself in a position anyway where I have to ask. So it's just easier for me to let the nations settle, and I'm sure there will be some good guilds. I know that there's a few. So I have offers on the table, and some of them are pretty good. And I think there's at least 3 offers on the table, and there's probably going to be more. So I'll just pick somewhere. I just kind of want to play B3, and I want to play the game on easy mode with one of the super clusters like Scott or Trace or some of the sport guys are in U Corp. So they're just part of. Why should I make a guild of like you might get mega zerged by 5, you might get cluster started, you might all kinds of. I just feel like going with one of the super clusters. So it's not like it's that hard to get into one of them when there's and Opa's pretty legit. They brought like a duo size guild to 20s, and so Opa got to engage in nation building and expansion with their 20s, which I always liked. I like that part of the game. I got to do some with zeros as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely no. I'm not really.
No serious.
I'm not gonna make a fake
sure.
B3 guild either.
Yeah. Yeah. No serious business for Baylor on B3. Confirmed.
But yeah, but no, definitely it's like what are you saying about the BMF? I mean, we're like pretty clean as far as all the people who are one pilot, one account, and so there's a disadvantage, right? So we don't have the same move 500 million fleet in 2 hours, but we have a better durability for actually facing the crash. And then as far as the then if the theory is right, and so I don't know this for sure, but like I said, I think 90% logins rate, and how we know is through a combination of faith and evidence, and they're just never gonna crash us. They can't beat us in a crash, and I'll keep sending away enough fleet to make it enticing, and they're literally never gonna crash us no matter what, because they have like 10 guys when the chips are down, and that's just, you can't crash a guild like that. So then so Kepler is definitely the more. There's going to be a lot of work necessitated there, and I have to get Utopia back in shape a little bit. And then there's also Antares, so that's 3 really good servers, GM servers, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, you have a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do on all 3 of those servers, so there's no time for you on B3. Get out of here with that.
Yeah, there's like plenty. I have plenty of high quality Astros to play over the next quarter and the quarter.
Yeah, Kepler has a lot of potential. Utopia is going to be slow forever. There's not a lot of potential there, but Kepler, a lot of potential for things to do.
Yeah, so the way there's definitely not 100% free, as FK would say, and I think B3. So I think it's in the cards. It's just not me making or leading a guild, because then I can play more like Black, or some of these guys, right? Because think about, well, no, you're spinning, Scott. You're spinning again, but so think of it like this, right? Like as far as a GM who's active on 4 servers as a GM server on 4 for 4, like actually who does that? Literally who does that? And the answer is nobody. So the closest example I could think of to find is Mr. Black, who is a GM type. He's always a GM type on all of the servers he plays. So then Mystic, Nexus, Antares, Utopia, right? That's the quad right there. So then, but for all those, he's kind of like he's finding a GM to give one of those to on Mystic. So then he's Opa's got a pretty large organization. So then what you see on A3, that's the house that Black.
Hey, Scott, can you take care of that
on Mystic
on the messages, please?
Oh, there's some spamio,
yeah.
Well, you're a good man, Scott. Very professional when you're doing your job. But so yeah, I think Spark is another one of these guilds who they could have taken the easy sim, but they declared on us. And WM is also one of those guilds who they have kind of this like, why are you hitting yourself thing going on, and that was definitely Spork after the first crash.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll be. So I think those fleets, like, it's not going to be that hard to kill all their fleets. The problem is you can't really catch them, and then if we launched on them, then they the geography will vary a little bit by wormhole. But right now they can just easily jump right over us. So then I have to play the game patiently like they did, and you called it a long war, and that's exactly what it is. It's going to be econ war more than any other server. And V2, it's kind of the last of its kind in a way. Nexus, that's another server. I saw you top one there, and that you see all the guilds there. That's definitely a server that's going to have a second wind too.
All the fans are coming out for you in chat right now.
Well, I literally don't even know who these people are. And then, fake news is, it's not, the term might be new, but it's not new. It's as old as man. Fake news is, so then I think Zara's been spending a little too much time with Jimmy. Like, I tried to do the right thing on Typhon, and I figured, we might be able to make a deal, and it was, so there was a little bit of drama on Typhon, and then there was more drama on Kepler with accounts getting recovered back and forth. But that's over and done with now. Yeah. So no more cross-server, attacks. Are begging you, man. Let's just have fun, fair fight crashes, and not, just kick there a bunch of people on your guilds because they're whatever they did on Typhon or whatever it was.
Yeah. But Baylor, at this point, we are now way over schedule. I'm cutting you loose.
Because we went. I thought we went long the last time.
We probably did. I think we did. But now I want to talk about B3. So I'm giving you the boot officially now.
Yep.
Big B.
That's cool.
Big B. Anyway,
that's all good. I talked about everything I wanted to talk about, and so you have a B3 preview. You spent a lot of work, and I gave you. Hopefully, I didn't spoil too much of the B3.
Oh, not at all. Oh, not at all. There's a plenty. Don't you worry. Yeah. No. But thanks so much for coming on, Baylor. I just knew that. As far as my time wise, I'm like, I gotta start wrapping it up. But again, thanks so much for coming on, Baylor, and I'm sure everyone appreciates it, except for like 2 crazy people in chat.
Oh, my rogues gallery. I mean, I'm against a bunch of. There's a lot of enemy guilds we're up against on 3 servers, as you said, and they're.
I mean, you're always radicalizing. You're always radicalizing people. Is that what they said?
They radicalize each other. That's what traditional anti-Baylor types do.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but all right, man. We're gonna let you go, Baylor. Thanks so much, and you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. All right, go. Odessa, thanks for the Twitch Prime. Appreciate it so much. But that was Baylor, good friend of the news, and apparently a far-right fascist that I've given a platform. And he creates Christian extremists. It sounds like a real thing. Sounds very real. Guys, it is now time to dive into the B3 preview. B doesn't have a name, so we're just going to keep calling it B3. But it's closer than you'd expect. We're at day 141 on Antares. So only a little over a month away from it coming out. Usually a month before server start is when people start recruiting for the next server. New servers open every 6 months using the powers of math. We're roughly 40 days away from that server. And I'm going to do my best to start spoiling who is going to be making guilds or not. There's some people that are publicly recruiting, and I'm glad they're doing it publicly, so I'm not just cheating it. But I've done a bit of investigative research to see if I can put together a preview who's also secretly starting. I haven't asked Wizard directly about B 3.0 changes yet, maybe any 3.0 balance changes. And he said he wouldn't make a change before B3 comes out, and he definitely wouldn't be making a change that only affects B3 and not Antares. Like, it would be something that affects both. And next week, or in a few days, when I send him some interview questions, I am going to ask him about that to see if we can expect any 3.0 balance changes coming up instead of just getting blasted with it when they just get changed on the servers. I think it might be fun to know that ahead of time. But anyway, side note, if you're trying super hard to create your B3 guild in secret, so no one knows you have like your 8 friends starting in one galaxy or whatever, I think that sucks, and I think you suck. If you think you need to have that 100% secrecy to start your group, you probably got some problems, man. If you need that full super secrecy, it's okay if people know you're starting. Just don't tell them where. Especially if you're just doing a little thing with friends. Be like, hey, me and my friends are doing something. Cool. Spill the beans, man. But first, before we get into who's playing, I can make a short list of names or groups from the current servers that you can expect not to see on B3. Some people prefer to not make their guilds on consecutive servers, and B3 is no exception. Number one being Belwar. I asked Belwar the other day. He said he's out. He's just going to focus on Antares and trying to do his guild launches every 2 weeks. So we're not going to see Belwar. We don't know where his player group is going to end up, but there are a lot of players in those lower A10s that are going to be in need of a home on B3. The Boomers and OPA. Basically the same reason, and that no one in that group is really interested in GMing on the next server. I mean, technically I am, but I'm just making like a random recruit training guild, and I'll probably end up latching on to like whatever cluster power emerges so we don't just get murdered or whatever. But it's super serious, not business, and I'm not recruiting for it. People have been like, hey, Jordan, maybe you'll play with you. I'm like, I'm not really recruiting, but if you want to be in my dumb training guild, I guess we'll have 3 people to start, sure. But anyway, back to the OPA people, like those Boomers, all the RD folks, no one from them is leading a group. So there's a lot of people from OPA that'll be looking for a home too. Maybe they'll be falling out into the Celeste group, who knows. We just heard from Baylor. He's not going to be starting he won't be starting like a real guild, but he might do something small, but he also might just play in a bigger guild and not worry about it. So he's probably not doing a real guild. Also, he has the other servers to play, so he doesn't have time to go harder on a 4th server. Cloak and Zahaga, they're out, and they're not going to be back for B3 either. And Cloak says we should not expect to see Zahaga back anytime soon, or even possibly ever. So there's going to have to be someone else that takes up the big Zerg mantle. And I think we can probably guess who it'll be, and we'll talk about it soon. But we are going to talk about some groups that are definitely playing now. And number one on the list, I think the best guild that's coming into the server, Haley's Communist Guild. Haley, aka Celeste, has been openly recruiting for her communism guild for months already. Word on the street is that it's going to be super aggressive, but God knows how long that guild will actually last before it just implodes due to everyone being a dick to each other inside of the guild. I do think the guild has a good chance of success for a while it lasts, but unfortunately communism is usually destined to fail, so I can't confirm it'll last forever. Someone who used to be saying he'd be starting a group on B3, but kind of hasn't said much about it anymore. OG Kush in the Discord. He used to be talking about how he was going to be trying to put 10 groups of people in all 10 galaxies in a cluster, and they'll just dominate his entire cluster. But he hasn't really talked about that in a while. So I don't know if that pipe dream has disappeared or not. Also, I don't have high hopes for him being able to acquire 50 people to put 5 people in 10 galaxies. Low hopes for OG Kush. Next on the list here I have DPS. DPS has started recruiting for his guild. He usually skips the spring guild that starts, but he usually starts his guild in the fall. Many months ago, DPS and Alicus had shitposted that they would be starting guilds together and allied for B3, but it seems like that has kind of fallen apart due to both players' relative insanity. DPS did have very good success on Nexus. I believe he has the rank 1 guild over there still, and he's going to be looking to repeat that. Although it will be harder for him this time without Cloak and Zahaga guilds to use as a punching bag, as he did on Nexus. Coming out of retirement, we have Clarky, an old, consistent GM. Word on the street that he is going through his old contact Rolodex to try to bring back some of his old names that played with him to come back for B3. Baylor and Clarky apparently don't get along, and even though Baylor didn't mention it just before, I think we can assume Baylor's not going to be leading a guild on B3 due to total fear of Clarky. That's a guarantee. And Clarky generally plays things pretty safe, so it wouldn't be surprising to see his upcoming guild on B3 be surviving until the later stages of the server. From the teens on Antares, I know we're going to see Trace and Jimmy come back. They're going to be up to their usual tricks. We've heard they're recruiting hard. I believe they have a lot of people in their web recruiting pretty hard. I know Jimmy's been recruiting, Trace is recruiting. There's a player named Kami who's recruiting for B3 that can be linked back to Trace and Jimmy. Could it also be linked back to a potential return of Irish Eyes? Anyway, that's another person that could possibly be recruiting towards that Trace and Jimmy group. Also, Wheels, who's currently playing in OPA but has a lot of history with the Trace and Jimmy crew. Wheels might be throwing his hat into the ring for B3. Don't know if he'll be with Trace and Jimmy, but he stands in a good position to pick up a lot of the OPA players that are currently homeless for B3. But yeah, we'll find out what happens there if he paves his own path or goes back to James, Slippin' James. Alicus is going to be playing on B3. I mean, he was talking about B3 almost as soon as he started on Antares. And he may end up with a surprisingly large group of players, because he's going to be able to pick up some of those Cloak and Zahaga players that got abandoned in the Antares 30s. So Alicus has been talking a big game. We'll see if he makes a big splash on that server. Let's see. Also from the 30s, Technique, also known as Ed. He's part of the upper 30s from Antares. He's looking at starting a group there as well. Don't know if he'll be together with Alicus, but I've heard he's recruiting. Maybe he'll become the heir to that Cloak and Zahaga empire. Also, maybe possibly heir to the Cloak and Zahaga Empire. Could it be Admiral Kirk? Didn't he relocate out of the 30s down? I know he has talked about trying to get the gang back together, but we'll see if that actually happens, if Japan War Trek players regroup under Kirk. Also, we can be safe to assume that ASAE, they're going to be there. They're going to play as hard as they always do. They always keep that big presence. And those are the people I know for sure that have been recruiting. I have a good list of maybes too. For instance, Cancer Crew. I don't know what their plans are for B3. On the Speed server, they got very tilted and they were on the verge of breaking up there. But then they got really tilted on Antares. Like FK, I don't think you could say a single happy thing about Antares if you pressed him. They all got super tilted on Nexus. I mean, either they are just that tilting on every single server, or maybe they are just going to take a break on B3 because they're just so annoyed at the game that they've done to themselves. I'm not sure where... Yeah, that's what I was just saying. They might just be always tilting and it's just some talking. But, like, through Speed server, two Cancer people messaged me and were like, I think this might be the end of Cancer Crew for real. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. If their players fall out, I would expect a lot of them to fall into Celeste's guild, if that happens. That's my guess for their landing crew for players. Next group I don't know is playing, but they most likely will be. That Detroit and Spork group. They play every server. I'm sure they'll show up with the same player list you see right now in U-Corp and Shreks, being small independent guilds. And I'm sure they'll be back on B3. I don't think they skip servers, so we can probably see them. I just haven't heard that they're actually recruiting yet. Also China. I don't know if anyone has asked if China's going to be playing on B3. They haven't done much on Antares, so I don't know if they're in love with 3.0 servers or not. They only made their first real trip out of the cluster 4.5 months into the server. But I mean, I guess they are handy to keep around for defending your bases while your own guild gets to go out and kill stuff. Maybe they'll want to be on that guard duty again, but I don't know who's going to try to bring China to the next server. Maybe Trace will bring him again. Who knows? I talked about Kirk before. He has talked about getting that Cloak and Zahaga gang back together, but I haven't heard that he's actually started doing it yet. And last on the list, Scott is a maybe. He's most likely not doing anything because he kind of just cares about Utopia, and he bailed out of the Antares 10s after about a month of serious business there. If he does anything, it'll probably just be something small and memey for the memes, but I don't think he's going to go hard on a pre-server ever again because Antares didn't sit with him well. And really, guys, that's it for the whole preview. That's who I know starting, who I think could be starting and who's officially said they're not starting. But that's it. Short little preview about who's who on who's going to be starting on B3. I'm going to be trying to provide updates for as more people throw their hats into the ring on the episodes leading up to B3. We're going to have at least 2 more episodes before B3, maybe 3rd, depending on when it actually comes out in September. We'll see what happens. And I have just a plea also. I can't tell you like who you should play with or whatever, but I think for B3, if you're out there, if you're listening, try to get outside your comfort zone. Play with a group that you haven't played with before. If you've been playing with the same guild that you've played with for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, forever, break out of it, man. Try something new. Your friends in your old guilds, they're still going to be your friends if you try playing under a different GM for once. There's a lot of different things to experience in Astro, and you don't get to do that when you just play for the same GM and group over and over and over. So just like try something new. Just try it. I promise that you'll have fun. Probably. There's a good chance you'll still have fun playing with a different group. But that's it, guys. That's the end of the news. Also, Amy Smith, you're very wrong about next server being 1.5. It's a 3.0. But it's the end of the news, my dudes. I would like to thank everyone for tuning into the ANN. I hope you're all looking forward to B3. I know I am. I'm very happy to be goofing off in a trading guild for not serious business. And before I forget to create the forum post right after this, that there is going to be that interview with Wizard in 2 weeks from now, and I'm trying to solicit more questions to ask him. So I need your help coming up with those questions. You can message me your reply to what I'm going to post on the forums. You can message me in game or Discord, whatever you can. I'm going to try to send him the list of questions on Wednesday, so if it's not before then, it's not going to get to him. And also, if you're interested in coming on the ANN, go ahead, reach out to me. You don't have to be a guild leader or whatever. You don't have to be Baylor, who's led 100 guilds, to come on. You can just ask. It's still cool if you got something to talk about. ANN does not discriminate based on whether you're a GM or not. You can send me those messages in-game. My name usually always has George something in it. There's Discord, Twitch, wherever you can find me. It's all there. As always, my dudes, thanks so much for watching. You enjoy your Sunday. Where's my end of the news page? Where did it go? Where's my stream end thing? Oh my god, guys. Level 10 emergency. ANN can't end. There it is. Why was it not with the rest of the stuff? Alright, goodbye for reals.